Flint Dibble was wrong about nearly every single small detail he said about maritime archaeology. He does not understand maritime archaeology. He was disrespectful to Graham Hancock. He is not a intellectually curious person. He is not willing to think about other possibilities, and he is not the person or the type of person that we are going to learn more about our past from. He's the type of person who is going to only hinder our progress in understanding our past.
There might even be people listening that didn't even see the debate between Hancock and Flint. You know, I wonder if you can just kind of summarize, just from a high level, what they were both saying, and why you think that Flint just is way off on this.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Flint Dibble was saying that because there are no ships, and I'm paraphrasing Flint, so if I get this wrong, if that's okay. I'm trying my best from memory, but I'm not trying to misrepresent it. I show quotes from him in my video to attempt to really show what he said. So the video is the best place to go, but if you're not going to do that, that's okay. Flint Dibble is trying to argue that because we have no ships that would have been able to travel across oceans, because we don't have them in the archaeological record, that means that disproves Graham's hypothesis. But this is a bad disproof, because we know that there was seafaring during the Pleistocene. Also, that ships do not preserve as well as Flint Dibble claimed for a vast number of reasons. Shipwrecks just don't preserve that well. There was seafaring in the Pleistocene, which he said there wasn't. They preserve better. They preserve worse than he claimed. The references that he made to the amount of archaeology that has been done in the oceans were incorrect. He claimed that thousands of ships have been excavated by archaeologists. That's not true. He referenced data that was not archaeological in nature, that actually did not show that 300,000 ships exist in the archaeological record. These were vast majority modern ships, which could be considered archaeological, but they do not show, these ships do not show that archaeologists ever found these ships, because these are mostly, if you look at the data yourself, which I have, you can look through it. I read them like The Big Short. You go into the things, you read them, if you know that reference. But we don't have as many in the archaeological record, because there aren't even 300,000 in the archaeological record. They were annotated when they sank. We might not even know where they are. A lot of these coordinates on these databases, where the 300,000 number, the 3 million number of an estimate comes from, they're mostly modern. And if they're not modern, they might not exist in the record. We just know that they sunk. We might even know exactly where they sunk, and they're not there when people go looking, because they were destroyed. You have to find very specific environments, somewhere like where Vasa sunk off the coast of Sweden, which is a brackish area in, I think, the Black Sea. This is a cold, brackish, low salinity, and I believe it may or may not be. I don't think it's an anaerobic environment, but it might be less oxygenated than elsewhere. They found the ship from the 17th century, best preserved ship that they found in a nearly perfect environment, and it was still heavily destroyed after just 400 years. We also know the Polynesians were traveling across thousands of miles for thousands of years, and yet the oldest ship that we have is from 600 years ago. Flint Dibble was wrong about nearly every single small detail he said about maritime archaeology. He does not understand maritime archaeology, and I will debate anybody who wants to come and discuss this with me, because Flint Dibble is wrong, and he will not talk to me because he's scared and he knows that he's wrong, and he would be embarrassed by somebody who only has an undergrad degree in anthropology talking to him and schooling him on what he believes is his own subject. But he is wrong. He was disrespectful to Graham Hancock. He is not a intellectually curious person. He is not willing to think about other possibilities, and he is not the person or the type of person that we are going to learn more about our past from. He's the type of person who is going to only hinder our progress in understanding our past. And anthropology and archaeology, the field, it is a social construct. It is socially constructed by humans. It's culture. It's learned, and it's very new. The field, the father of American anthropology, about 120 years ago, Franz Boas. This is not a long-standing field. This is very new. Their methods are informed by our culture. Their understanding is informed by their selection of how they're selected to be archaeologists and anthropologists. And the idea that they have a monopoly on deciding what our past is wrong. And we're not going to stand for it anymore, especially in an environment like we have today where anybody can put what they want on the internet, and they can, through the power of their argument, not through the power of being in a gate-kept position, of being chosen to be a professor in a university by university presidents. That's just not how it works anymore. And they need to either get with the new understanding of the internet age, or they need to move out of the way because they don't control it anymore. So I have this more in depth on my channel. I did about a 50-minute video. But this 50-minute video that I did really goes in depth in Flint Dibble's arguments. You know, some of these other things for maritime archaeology, like the oldest Polynesian canoe that we have is from 600 years ago, about 1400 AD. But the Polynesians, Ryan, if you're still able to pull up that map of Polynesia, they're traveling very far distances, very, very far distances. We don't have that evidence. That one right there, you know, they have the dates on it. 800, I think BC, 700 AD, you know, look how far they're traveling. They went to Hawaii. That distance, that's like over 1,000 miles. We don't have any boats from that. We don't have any ships. We know what ships they were using. We don't have them. Our oldest one is 600 years ago.
But where are the shipwrecks?
If it didn't happen. Yeah. No,
it's all deteriorated. It's all gone after just a couple hundred years. You know,
these are dynamic environments. Flint Dibble claimed that the wave action doesn't affect ships. He based that on ceramics, which were found in one place in Florida. The archaeologist who did that work does not believe it. I don't think I'm misrepresenting her when I say she does not believe that's relevant to shipwrecks. Most of this evidence in maritime archaeology is done on shipwrecks. You can find news stories of shipwrecks after a storm coming up on the North Carolina shore. These storms affect them. You have a situation like the Black Sea, one of the most well-preserved shipwrecks ever that was excavated by Krumbochvarov. That's from a few thousand years ago. That Black Sea environment, that is a few thousand years old. The environment is dynamic. It is not static. It changes over time. And when it changes, these conditions, this homeostasis that might preserve a ship for 50,000 years, it's not homeostasis anymore. It's all of it, everything that Flint Dibble, and I will debate with anybody. I've been giving this offer for a long time. I will debate with anybody who wants to defend, anybody who wants to DM me on Twitter, anybody. I will do it live. I will do it for as long as it takes. I will debate any person who wants to defend Flint Dibble's positions on maritime archaeology. I don't care who it is. I will do it. And they are wrong, so they will not do it with me because they know that they're incorrect, so they want to ignore what I'm saying. But I'm not. And I show it with scholarly sources from real maritime archaeologists who sat down and did this work, like John Erlandson, who Flint Dibble cited. John Erlandson's Kelp Highway hypothesis that Flint Dibble cited is not only did John Erlandson do decades of research prior to the Kelp Highway hypothesis, which replaced Clovis first as the idea of the peopling of America, of the Americas, he did that after decades of research into maritime archaeology, literally into research on Pleistocene seafaring. That is what John Erlandson did. This is the one that Flint Dibble cited, one of the foremost maritime archaeologists. Not only did he do that, his work is about Pleistocene seafaring, which Flint Dibble says doesn't exist. The Kelp Highway hypothesis that Flint Dibble cited is a theory of coastal migration during the Ice Age, during the Pleistocene. That is what the Kelp Highway hypothesis is. And I don't think Flint Dibble ever read it. I've read it. But Flint Dibble is saying at the same time that he's citing a theory of Pleistocene seafaring, that Pleistocene seafaring does not exist.
And what was he saying about it?
He was, it was in a separate discussion about the replacement for Clovis first, essentially. It's the heir apparent to Clovis first. And you see this from Europe. this is from the Kelp Highway hypothesis. The Kelp Highway hypothesis does not assume that the only route was from the northwest. Flint Dibble is the one who cited this by John Erlandson, one of the foremost maritime archaeologists. And in the Kelp Highway hypothesis, it discusses the evidence or the possibility of human beings coming from the northeast and the southwest. And there's more research we can't get into the idea that at a certain point, maybe 10,000 years ago, at the very least, more recently with Polynesians, that the Polynesians went to South America, or that the South Americans went to Polynesia. Probably the Polynesians went to South America. And there's even some evidence of Australians going to South America. There's more of these maritime arguments. Flint Dibble's 3 million. He said, I made a mistake. It's 300,000. It's not 300,000. Flint Dibble referenced data that comes up with this 300,000 number that is not relevant.
What was it? 300,000 what? Shipwrecks?
300,000 shipwrecks that exist, that we have in the archaeological record, but that's not true either. Right. It's most of these ships, the data that he referenced was from a bioscience journal, which is okay. You can reference data from other fields, but it has to be relevant. And the data that they referenced he used 4 examples. He even brought this up on Joe Rogan. He showed an image. 4 images. One was the Mediterranean. That was archaeological data, maritime archaeological. The other ones were from NOAA in the United States, Australia, and Ireland. And it was a dead link for NOAA, but that is data that I know is mostly modern shipwrecks, the vast majority modern shipwrecks. It's data that is from where shipwrecks happened. And I know for a fact, because the data is open and I looked through it, that the Irish data from around Ireland, it's also mostly modern. The Australian data, I think it's 41 shipwrecks prior to 1800. These are not shipwrecks that exist in the archaeological record. A lot of them, most of them, especially the older ones, they don't even know where these shipwrecks are. Some of them don't even exist. Some of the notes on some of these shipwrecks that are in there, this is data that's for, and I'm sorry, I'm talking too quickly, but all of this is in my video. If you go to Illegitimate Scholar on YouTube, these ships they annotate where a shipwreck is. Somebody wrote down in 1671 that there was a ship that broke off. One of them literally just says, this ship broke off on the coast. There's no shipwreck. They know that it broke off. They saw it crash. And there is no shipwreck anywhere. A lot of them didn't have coordinates.
So, yeah, I mean, like, if you've got a wooden ship and it wrecks into some, like, whatever, reef or something, and, like, how often is an ancient ship going to sink and be at the bottom? I mean, the wood floats, right? So if you run into something and it gets all broken up, in a lot of cases, I would think it would just like break apart and float away, and you never see it again, right?
Well, if it breaks up, then of course it's going to go away. But if it sinks, what happens is, yes, the wood would float, but because the ship is full of stuff, that's actually how they usually find them. Because the ship will sink to the bottom because of the cargo in it, which is often ceramics or maybe stones, ballast.
But I guess my question is, like, how often does it have enough cargo in it to cause it to sink and then be found at some later date versus, just break up and float away and we never hear about it again? I mean, out of the whatever, if there's been 5 million shipwrecks from now until the earliest point in human history, you would think like at least a boatload of those, maybe half even, would be broken up and just float away, and they never would even get to the point where they're stuck at the bottom of the ocean and they could be found in the first place. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be able to give a specific estimate of how many, but even if they do sink, the environment, it's never perfect. Yeah. There are a few factors, salt water. This is another thing Flint Dibble did. I'm sorry if we need to stop, but
in a few minutes, but we're good. Cool. Yeah.
So one of the things that, Flint Dibble said on Joe Rogan, the oldest shipwreck is 7,000 years old. That's not a shipwreck. He was referencing canoes. They were canoes, crucially, and people will respond and say, oh, it doesn't matter. It's still a shipwreck. Or even if it's not a shipwreck, it's still a ship. But it wasn't in the ocean. It was in a lake. And not only was it in a lake, but they were canoes that were in a lake. Excuse me. And I don't know about Rome. I don't know about 7,000 years ago what they did, but what I do know about these dugout canoes, in general, at least in Ireland and in for the Algonquins, to store these canoes, you have to keep them waterlogged. They can't dry out. So you can't have them out where they're going to freeze, because if they're waterlogged and it freezes, it's going to destroy it. So they would store these canoes by putting stones in them and putting them below where the ice goes, to store them under the ice line in a lake, which is going to put them in an environment that is perfect for preservation if nobody comes back for them, because they're going to be under the ice line where they're protected because they were put there to be protected. And a factor in which makes the ocean worse for preservation is that there are things like Lemuria, shipworm. There are all sorts of different pests which are worse in warmer water that are going to destroy over time the integrity of a wooden ship or a boat. So a 7,000-year-old canoe in a lake that was very, very likely placed where it was found by somebody who placed it in a place to be protected, rather than a shipwreck, which is up to chance and accidents. That's going to be broken up in salt water, which is not going to preserve.
Not only saltwater, but you've got currents and you've got tides and, everything coming in and out. It's like, it's going to be a lot harder to preserve something in the ocean than it is in a lake, I would think, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and Flint Dibble's one good piece of evidence of shipwreck preservation was in the Mediterranean, which is not the ocean. It's a sea.
It's a sea.
It has currents, but they're much, much calmer. And that says nothing about going between continents, especially when Europe at the time was and I will paraphrase or I think quote Graham Hancock, a frozen fucking wasteland. This is not the place that you're going to be going during the Ice Age. There's nothing there. It's frozen. So you'll find perfect environments like in the Black Sea for, I think, the past 6,000 years. That'll change. It's an anaerobic environment. It's cold, low salinity. The Black Sea is, I think, brackish water, so it's not fully salt. Cold, low salinity, low oxygen, and I think those are the three major ones.